afternoon. I'm waiting on Mollie Birney, and we are going to be talking about parenting today. Hope everyone is doing well. And just for anyone who is joining, the talk that we're doing today isn't going to be about OCD. It's going to be focused on parenting and some of the challenges and struggles therein. So look forward to discussing with Mollie when she joins. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, you can go ahead and throw them in the question mark box to the right of the comment area. And we got a couple of questions in advance, but would welcome any additional ones. Hi there. Welcome. Do we have some parents joining us? I'd imagine yes. You know what? I'm getting a message from Mollie. So let me check in about that. Might have some technical difficulties going on. Hold on one second. So we're just sorting out some technical difficulties. I think Mollie's going to be joining me hopefully here momentarily. But as I mentioned, we'll be discussing parenting, so we won't be discussing anxiety or OCD per se, though we did have a question about parenting in the context of having an OCD diagnosis. Let me grab Mollie.
Hello. Yeah, perpetually technical difficulties, right?
Always. That's COVID life right there.
No doubt. We're in the process of moving, so everything is chaos. It's yeah.
Fun.
Yeah.
Exciting. So I was just mentioning that, we're not necessarily talking about mental illness today, although certainly within the context of parenting, the discussion of how having a diagnosis can come up is probably something that we'll talk about.
Well, I realize it's not just even as limited as parenting. Like, we're talking to people who are parents and people who have parents. Like, certainly the experience of having parents is its own adventure, and really starting to understand that, especially from the perspective of being a parent and realizing how Looney Tunes everyone actually is, and that none of us were really qualified to have kids in the first place.
Totally. Yeah, I think when we were talking about this in preparation of having this discussion, we were talking about, and I know that we talked about imposter syndrome together whenever that was a couple months ago, and I think it's really interesting to see what life from the vantage point of being a parent is, and being like, oh, we have no idea what we're doing. Like,
truly
I should not be in charge of a person. That seems very backwards somehow.
I'm sure I've told you this story, but when Wesley, our son, had been born, I think 1 week later, my mom then left. She had stayed with us, and my husband and I looked at each other that night and went, should we tell someone that like there was no adult supervision, and here we were with an infant that we were then supposed to keep alive, just absolutely no capacity to really understand the responsibility that we were looking at. And yet that's exactly how our parents must have been, truly.
Right. Absolutely. And I think everyone feels that way, but nobody really talks about feeling that way.
No, not really. Like, there's sort of the adorable overwhelm of, oh, we're the sleepless new parents and all that, but when I really realized that at the moment, as far as I'm aware of, parenting consists of, kissing him a lot, and then making sure every minute that he doesn't die, because and as soon as he becomes mobile, many more opportunities to die at all times. So intervention on this kid's just existence, like allowing him to persist, it's exhausting.
And trying to make sure he doesn't die in the process.
Yeah, exactly. Just make it's a low bar, but just make sure Wes doesn't die. That makes me a good enough mom, right?
Right, absolutely. Well, my partner, TJ, his rule with his boys has always been just don't die. That's like the number one rule. You just don't die. Like, that's it.
I
And
think that's a Jerry Seinfeld thing about, he was talking about scuba diving and he's like, there's a fish, don't die, don't die. Like, the terror of everyday life is just as intense, of like, just don't die, let's just keep it alive.
let's just try. Let's just try to, everybody do their best. Thank you very
Right.
much. Totally. Um, but it is really interesting in the transition. My transition in was pretty abrupt,
Mm-hmm.
because I was not, and then all of a sudden I was dating somebody with kids, and then there was sort of this transition into what is this role and what is it about. And so it's
Mm.
cool because as we talk about it, like we're talking about it from the roles of step parenthood versus parenthood
Right,
from the
exactly,
get-go.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So
but
what was that experience like? And you have both the benefit and the curse of a background of mental health coming
yeah,
in here with your now like the stepsons to be at the time.
totally.
How did you
Well,
manage?
and my own anxiety, right? Background in mental health challenges on my own, and this is maybe where we talk about a little bit about how anxiety and having a diagnosis can impact parenting. But
Mm-hmm.
it's my understanding that anxiety is a gift that comes with parenting anyway,
Mm-hmm.
and having already had some of that, just the concerns about being a caring person too, having
Mm.
a negative impact on these young, impressionable people,
Oh,
and not, and I think it's probably the same across the board, but not knowing, okay, well, if I say this, what happens, right? They're teenagers
right.
and one of them does something that's, that I don't find funny and I don't laugh. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, is not laughing at them going to harm them somehow, right? This is
Oh,
the
okay.
thought process.
The anxiety gets really amped
Mm,
at
oh
that point.
yeah,
Am
like
I
some sort of a
dying?
harm around them certainly has come up. I
Yeah.
don't I feel very grateful that that's not where I am today, but
Mm-hmm.
certainly like throughout the process I've seen that come up, and it's interesting.
Wow.
It's for sure.
Can feel some of the anxiety for me again, like the difference here is you're talking about two, I don't remember the ages of your
13 and 14.
13 and 14, that's right, and a 5-month-old, so this is quite a span here. But my anxiety looks like, okay, if I'm letting him cry it out, am I scarring him? Am I
Well, and that's
damaging him?
right. And it's sort of the same thing, right? It's
Right.
just at different stages of development,
Right.
and the idea that somehow you're not meeting them in the correct way.
So how do you work with that? Because obviously, all of this is under the same umbrella of perfectionism,
Yeah.
anxiety, imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
that we as parents potentially don't know what we're doing, or potentially are
Totally.
wielding more power than we should be granted. How does one work with that?
How does one work with that? Well, I can speak to it. I think even from my personal and professional experience, they're largely aligned.
Hmm.
A lot of it is just about accepting uncertainty and recognizing that in doing your best,
Right.
that has to be enough because it's your best. And so you
Sure.
can care, you can show up, you can try, but at a certain point, one can become paralyzed in trying to make the right decision and do the right thing, whatever
Hmm.
in the world that means. And the sad thing about that is, and I found this again through my own experience and also in working with others, is that the paralysis has an impact too.
Right. Right. Right.
And so
Right.
you can't win. Like, even if you stop and you're like, I'm not going to touch this one, I'm just not going to make a decision, you're making a
Right.
decision and you're telegraphing something to them about what it means to make the wrong decision. So you
So
can't
even really
win.
well-intentioned paralysis communicates you have to make a perfect decision.
Right, right. So ultimately, I think that there's actually some freedom in that and recognizing like you cannot win. There's no win. You
Hmm.
will in some way harm this person that you
Hmm.
love, and you just got to try your best to and I think actually going back to our work together in grad school and
Hmm.
learning about repair within the context of the therapeutic relationship, I think
Right.
that that's really all that we can hope for in any of our relationships, is not that we're going to not harm one another, but that when harm occurs, that we are able to, in a relatively expedient way, amend fences and try to work through it.
Absolutely. And I'm also, I'm thinking about how I have a handful of new moms in my practice, and how I tend to work with their anxiety, which I am only steps in front of here, that their children are a matter of weeks and my child's a matter of months. So I'm, not extremely qualified to talk about new parenting. I'm extremely qualified to talk about anxiety, but anxiety in the context of new parenting, still a new animal to me. But what I hear coming up a lot is the sense of, I shouldn't be this anxious, right? This shouldn't be happening. When in fact, where does that idea come from? Why the hell would we assume that this anxiety is inappropriate to this circumstance?
Absolutely. I think that it would be really strange if, as a new parent, you weren't more anxious. And talk about evolution being on the side of that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But also, people who have women who are having shame about how much noise they have about their parenting constantly, and are looking at the parenting blogs and the parenting Instagrams, and really intensely following these things, trying to quell their anxiety, when in fact, anxiety in this case might just be an indication that this thing is important to you.
Yes.
I love that. Love that.
Yeah. I do too. And I that's the thing is, I think even in the context of OCD, that happens a lot. Is like, well, why am I feeling so anxious about this? It must mean something. And the general consensus that people come to is that, well, it must mean that I really want this bad thing to happen that I'm thinking about.
Right.
And there are other options, like, well, it could mean absolutely nothing. It could mean that this thing that I'm worried about is deeply important to me. And so my anxiety has sort of converged, like you were just saying.
Totally. And the comment here is like, we program ourselves that it's important. And yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and it is.
Of course, this is not an inappropriate.
Right. Right. Well, and that I see what you mean in terms of, from maybe the OCD perspective, that by worrying, we say, oh, the thought that we're worrying about is really important, and it programs it to worry more. And I'm not sure if that's what the OCD means here, but I think in terms of, as we were talking about with the parenting stuff, that yeah, it is important. And I think that also gives it a lot of credibility for those who have any sort of nascent anxiety disorder tendencies to really just, well, then it's important that I worry about this, which I'm gonna throw this out to you. I have some clinical feelings about this, but what do you think the productivity of worry is?
I think I wrote an article about this. I'm not.
Did you?
If I didn't, I'm certainly going to. The illusion that when we're worrying, it feels so fucking productive. It feels like we're really like getting somewhere. We're really doing some work. When in fact, I'm again reminded. Bless you.
Oh dear.
Worrying it's like emotional masturbation. We're just running over the same piece of information. And look, if it was effective at quelling our insecurity, it sure should have worked by now. But it really just perpetuates the same material. That said, I think there's certainly something to be said for chewing on something, but to an extent, whether that's like, hey, set a timer, we have to have a limitation here, or just take a look at how devastating the process can be as it really increases and perpetuates paralysis. That's another issue. But no, that's my opinion on worry. I think Mark Twain,
I figured we'd have essentially the same opinion on worry. Go ahead.
Mark Twain said, worrying is like paying a debt you don't owe.
Yeah.
Loved that idea. Like you're just expelling energy that you are under no obligation to expend. You're just not.
Yeah.
How do you,
I guess,
go ahead.
I just want to ask a follow-up question, which is, I totally agree. I think you said it beautifully, and I could not agree more. I think that my less literary quote comes from, what's it called? J.K. Rowling wrote Something Beasts.
Fantastic Beasts.
Thank you. Yes.
Hey.
And it's not even like I read it in the book. It's from the movie, I think, and somebody shared it with me once. So it's like notches down from Mark Twain. But there's a quote, worrying means you suffer twice. And that's
Mm,
it, is like, you may never suffer this horrible thing. You may
right.
never suffer something horrible happening to your child, but
Sure. Sure.
if you worry about it over and over again, you're just living it multiple times, which
Right. Three
seems,
times or four times or
yeah,
five times.
or maybe
Suffering is
200.
life.
Right.
The concept in Buddhism of the second arrow, but in the
Yes.
context of worrying. So in Buddhism, the second, which I know you know this, but
Yes, but please.
the concept of the second arrow being to have the experience that we tell a lie, for example, and then judge ourselves for the lie.
Right.
The first arrow is the lie. Don't fucking
Right.
tell the lie. The second, forgive
Yeah.
me. The second arrow being, is it helpful to judge yourself for the lie? Does that absolve you of the initial thing, or does it just create a second wound?
Right.
So you're describing that worry is worrying twice. There's the event itself, and then the multiple times that you may have worried, which I really truly think of as emotional masturbation.
Yeah.
That's really what worry is.
Well, and I think that most people, though, have the false sense that it is productive. And so dispelling that myth is really, really important because, and I think the question that I was going to ask, though, is how do you differentiate between helpful reflection on the one hand and worry on the other? Because obviously, helpful reflection is important in a lot of realms, realms, not just parenting, but
right.
in order for us to grow, learn, change,
Mm-hmm.
etc.
Right.
But and I have definitely have thoughts about this, but
Sure.
I'm curious what where that,
Like, how do I discern between worrying and coffee and contemplation, so to speak? It's just a
right, exactly.
reference. And it's twofold. First of all, if I'm contemplating something, it's going somewhere. If I'm worrying, it's almost always cyclical. And I'm not actually able to discover anything new. I'm really just defending the opinion of whatever the worry was. I'm just really regurgitating that. So that's one piece, that the content is different if I'm contemplating versus worrying. And the other part is I tend to look in my body, that if I'm in worry, my jaw is usually a little bit clenched, or there's a sense of gripping, there's a sense of tension. Whereas if I'm in contemplation, there's a whole lot more relaxation. I can actually inhale and exhale without there being tension or relax or in relation to that. So that's kind of like the basic red flags that I look for. Like, A, am I going in circles? And is this productive? And what's my body doing?
Yeah.
How about you?
Yeah. I think those are all really great points. And I think the going in circles piece really speaks to the way that I think about it, that if you've gone over it once before and you've already fleshed it out, and then you pick it up again and you start picking it apart, that's where I would say that we're going into the realm of worry or rumination as opposed to reflection. So yeah, the repetitive nature of it, to your point, the flavor of it, and
there's like a scent and a taste to the whole experience of like, am I trying to solve some problem that isn't there, or am I just allowing the problem to be there and I'm sort of chewing on it and
considering and
exactly.
Well, is there any new information? Yeah, okay. Well, what about, how does that affect this, and how might I incorporate that versus, oh no, I have to get this right. And maybe there's perfectionism in worry that doesn't necessarily exist in
and the potential consequence if I don't then. Whereas contemplation has no consequence. There's no, like, if I don't do this, this isn't going to work out. It's more like, oh, what if I do this, and how's this going to work out? That contemplation is a creative act, whereas worry is exclusively an act of fear.
Yes.
There.
Yes.
Okay,
agreed.
that's going on Instagram at some point.
Yeah. No, but that's it. I mean, it is like much more creatively driven versus worry driven. I think that's a great way of delineating.
And if those of you who are with us, if you have questions around this, the topic that we're chewing on today is parenting, and that's both for people who are parents and people who have parents. So it's a really kind of wide umbrella here.
Even people who want to be parents. And
that's actually a question that I have from a client who I'd mentioned that we're doing this, and she goes, can you talk about people who don't know whether they should have kids or not have kids, and whether really take it, is this the right move, is this not the right move, is this the right thing for me, is, given the state of the world, should we have kids? That's
a tough one.
I know. Yeah, sorry.
Overpopulation. Whoa.
Super serious for Friday afternoon.
And I think that we actually, on my end, because I've got these questions here, um,
Yeah, so feel
that
free
someone
to-
had asked, what's that?
Oh, I was just letting those of us who are hanging with us right now, feel free to ask questions if you like, and we also have some that we're fielding.
Yeah. How someone can deal with the worry if they have kids that they will have, mental illness because of genetics, basically, was a big one that came up,
So,
which,
so the genetic history of mental illness and questioning, do I risk passing this on? Do I risk that whole process?
right,
Got it.
right.
So what's your
Yeah.
thought? How do you work with that?
Ooh, what's my thought on that? Well, first of all, I think that that's a worry that we could really get deeply entrenched in and go down
Absolutely,
the rabbit hole with.
absolutely.
I
I'd
mean,
imagine it
anything,
plays into the relationship with unknown, obviously. I mean, as many of these
absolutely.
do, but that, yeah, if you're going to roll the dice, there's going to be some degree of this that is not possible to be prepared for or accounted for.
Well,
So,
that's the thing is it's all an unknown,
mhm.
right? Like talk about the ultimate unknown,
who,
parenting. You
who
don't
knows
know who this
that,
person is going to be. You don't know like whether or not you're going to like them, you don't, right? Like
right,
all of these, you don't know whether or not they're going to be healthy. There's like all of these, it's like there's enough unknown in your own life.
hmm
And then you spring forth this thing that all, well, not in my case, but in some cases you spring forth this thing and it's like, oh, well, now I have to worry. Well, I don't have to, but I am going to tend toward worrying about myself. And I'm now going to tend toward worrying about you and what's going to
right,
happen to you and making sure you don't die, for
right.
instance.
Don't die, don't die.
Yeah.
Uh, the you actually just said something that really sparked an interesting idea to me. I mean, I think it's interesting. But you were saying that there's so much that we don't know. So the idea that just because statistics suggest that that there might be a higher likelihood of mental illness being passed down to the child, as though the illusion is, if I didn't have a history of mental illness, things would be fine. When
Right.
just as
Mm.
ridiculous. There's so many other possibilities that could go wrong or could go right as
Well,
well.
that's the thing.
That
If
it's
you
really
have
just,
mental illness and you're in treatment for mental illness or working on your mental illness, you might actually be the best candidate to parent a child and try to prevent the more corrosive elements of mental illness from
right,
limiting their lives, right?
right.
You know?
Right. So again, this comes back to, can you tolerate some unknown? Can you tolerate
Right.
not knowing? Can we tolerate making the best plan possible for the circumstances and then see what happens?
Yeah, absolutely. And, if you have a genetic condition and there's a very clear likelihood that it's going to happen, that's whether that's mental illness, I can't speak today, or like physical
Mm-hmm.
illness. You hear about this happening with things like Huntington's disease and stuff like that
Mm-hmm.
because it is so heritable that you do what you can, you make what
Mm-hmm.
choices you can, and you make the choice that ultimately best serves you, right? The one that you're willing, maybe that's, I don't mean in a selfish respect, but I think
Yeah.
oh, are you there? Sorry, you froze, I think.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, good. Okay. I don't know. It's just frozen for some reason. What was I just saying? Oh dear. I lost my train of thought.
Is it working yet? Am I back?
Yes. Oh, I think you're working. I think you're back. Yep. Yep. Totally. So wait, what, but I need your help to locate what it is that was just going through my brain and coming out of my mouth.
Okay.
Oh, yep. I think there is.
Hold on.
Okay. Oh, thank you. I think the choice. Oh dear, Molly might come back and join us, hopefully momentarily, but it seems that she is. Oh, hold. We've got it. And then I'll continue on my with my discussion of the choice that serves you. But I think it should be connecting at any moment. I don't want to. Aha, there you are. Can you hear me?
Did it work?
Oh dear.
Oh shit, now I can't hear you.
You can't hear me?
I can't. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, this makes for great TV, right?
Do you want to try signing out again? Can you hear? You still can't hear me, right?
Hold on a second.
Technical difficulties.
Let's see. All right, can you hear me at all?
Yeah. No, you're not. Yep. No, you're not.
Oh, yep, there you go. Now I can hear you.
Okay. I think we're better now. So, the OCD memes just reminded me. The OCD memes. It's weird that I'm echoing really badly. It's weird that I'm echoing really badly.
Oh no,
Like I can hear every. That's so weird.
Like I can hear every.
Oh dear. I hope everyone's enjoying this. Maybe we should try one more time. What do you think?
Maybe quits for the sake of technical difficulties.
What do you think?
If the fates are just
Well, let's try one more. Let's just
let's try one more.
Okay.
Okay, I'll end and I'll come back. Okay.
Okay, I'll end.